so much. I see that this is standing room only, and my father, Stanley Foster Reed, a New Yorker who launched the first edition of this book, would be so proud and happy. I'm sure he's here in spirit. I want to thank all the experts and the encouragers who are here today. And chief among encouragers is, of course, the Barnes & Noble Business Book Division, headed by Cal Hunter. So, although and I thank you.
I'm just the audio guy.
He's responsible for this event. I also particularly want to introduce, to start our show, our esteemed publisher of the McGraw-Hill Art of M&A Education series, and that is Noah Schwartzberg.
Since its first publication at McGraw-Hill, The Art of M&A remains the definitive resource, an unsurpassed one-stop guide to every facet of mergers and acquisitions. It is the most complete M&A resource available, cited as authoritative in legal cases and government reports, globally renowned, authoritative yet easily accessible, offering quick access to complex ideas. Its long-standing success would not be possible without the amazing effort of Alexander Lejeune. Since at first beginning our partnership on this latest edition, Alex has been unfailing in her enthusiasm, patience, and persistence, making sure the 5th edition lives up to its name and reputation. She has overseen an extremely complex process, marshalling an incredible list of contributors, chasing and cajoling and shaping, checking and double-checking, writing and editing, and always performing her role with charm and patience and her special knack for finding practical solutions. We're very fortunate to count Alex among our authors and to be home to the definitive mergers and acquisitions resource, the Art of M&A series. Alex, for all your hard work on this series and for helping arrange today's panel, from the entire team at McGraw-Hill, our most sincere gratitude. I also want to extend our gratitude to Jim Jeffries, chairman of the M&A Leadership Council, for his work and the work of his organization delivering best practices training to the M&A community, and for all the support the council has given the Art of M&A series over the years. Jim, over to you.
Okay, hey, thanks. I get 2 microphones. Well, I think that number one, this is a great group of very distinguished people. Everybody interested in the M&A environment, the M&A community, contributors, distinguished people up here in the front, as well as many of those I see in the audience as well. The first thing that I want to do, and the first thing that I want to acknowledge and say, is my sincere gratitude that Alex asked me to write the foreword in this book. And I think one of the things that hopefully was pointed out, if not many, in the foreword, is the contribution that this lady has made to the M&A community over these many years. There's obviously been decades of writings and a number of books that have come out authored by Alex called The Art of M&A. What a great title, what a great brand that has occurred, and published by McGraw-Hill, obviously. It was 10 years ago that roughly that we latched onto that name, The Art of M&A, and through my relationship with Alex, we borrowed it at first and then we partnered on it, and now we have, obviously, through an organization that I was founding back 10 years ago, we now train, and we've trained over 3,500 executives in the Art of M&A through workshops and programs that we sponsor today that are giving back to the M&A community. The M&A Leadership Council, if I can say so, is a council made up of volunteers from the best professional service organizations that we know of that do things along the M&A life cycle, that practice those areas. So as opposed to gaining knowledge from the academia world, we have applied knowledge and capabilities and practices that we distribute through this training that are based upon real life experience and real contribution from our partner firms that volunteer to do these things. So we're very proud that over 3,500 people have come through the training. We're very proud also that we utilize the publications, the Art of M&A publications as well. The Leadership Council also provides a true certification program and credentialing for these executives that come through the training. And we leverage Alex's book in the exam portion of the certification process that we have. And we're very delighted to announce that we're transitioning from many books that Alex has written to this great monument that's being released and has been released but is being acknowledged today. So the Art of M&A, the 5th edition, today is going to become the premier book for the certification process. Certified M&A specialist that we put out there. We also brought to the marketplace what we call the Board of M&A Standards. What we call, that's what it is. It's a board of executives and people who have deep experience in M&A that are out there to help the graduates and people coming through the process, as well as to create and identify and acknowledge best practices that can be leveraged by the M&A community. But none of this would have happened if Alex and I hadn't gotten together and got to meet her a long time ago, because Alex has been the biggest cheerleader for all of this that we do. And I think she'll continue to be that. I certainly hope so. But I'd love for you to read the foreword. The foreword is written from the heart because Alex has been that cheerleader. She has been behind me and all the things that we've done for many years now. And this is a great tribute to her. I'm just delighted to be a small part of that. So welcome everyone, and one more time I'd just like to acknowledge Alex, what she's doing and done for all of us in the M&A community.
So my name is John Hutta, and so I guess maybe for today I'm primarily timekeeper. So this is I'm putting the timer on for me. So Alex has this very tightly timed, so it's like 3 minutes max for everyone. Thank you all for being here. I'm the business partner of Alex at Capital Expert Services. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm the business partner with Alex at Capital Expert Services, and I'm not sure if it's working or not, but thank you so much. And I'm here to talk a little bit about logistics right now. So we are going to have this presentation from 12 until 12:45, tightly timed, as I mentioned. And I do want to mention that obviously those who need to sit down, please do try to offer the available seats to people who need to sit down. Please also know that just regular patrons and customers of Barnes & Noble will be shopping in this area, so please don't be concerned that people are going to be shopping and buying music while we're here. And if you do need to eat, please do go over into the cafe. I'm doing what Barnes & Noble wants me to do, which is there'll be shoppers in here, and there also will be. If you want to eat, you're welcome to eat in the cafe, which is down there. And then, of course, we do have some drinks that you're welcome to have later on in the program. So we are going to have a very tightly timed 12 to 12:45 presentation. We're going to have our experts speak on the here, who are all contributors to the book. Alex and I want to sincerely thank all the people who contributed to the book. They're all listed on the poster here. We hope, if you haven't signed this poster already, that you please do. And then we have our distinguished advisors for Capital Expert Services in the front row. So thank you so much for being here today. And they will be the ones asking the first set of questions after the panelists speak. And then, of course, the audience is welcome to ask questions too. And again, I'm the ones who will call you out and moderate. So yeah, so thanks so much. So back to Alex.
Thank you. I think I can just project my voice. I'm going to start with a question for our first panelist, and that is Francis G.X. Pileggi, the author of the best D&O litigation blog in the world. Francis Pileggi, as a leading Delaware attorney, you have written hundreds of articles about the fiduciary duties of care and loyalty. Can you boil them down into a few key lessons for M&A?
Oh, thank you, Alexandra, and thank you also for allowing me to participate in the book and in this presentation today. I understand I only have 3 minutes.
That's right, yeah.
And I'm sure this is something that you could easily take several hours to describe, so the challenge is to condense that into 3 minutes. And there are also many more famous people here, like Professor Elson and others who could be much more eloquent, but I'm going to try to do what I can in 3 minutes. So the principle stated is relatively simple, that you're required to act in the best interests of the beneficiaries and act as a reasonably prudent person would in the care of those obligations you have, such as to be fully informed. But even though the statement itself sounds relatively simple, there are thousands and thousands of decisions that apply those principles to facts, and some very smart and experienced lawyers and judges often disagree. And so if the most intelligent, most experienced people in this area disagree how those principles apply to particular facts, then it's understandable if the country lawyer might have difficulty sometimes applying those principles to facts. So I think the best way to answer the question in the limited time I have might be by way of an example. So in the context of a merger, there are many nuances and variations and permutations of that general principle, but in the context of a merger, simply stated, although there are many exceptions, the obligation would be to get the highest value if a company is for sale, and reasonable people can differ what the highest value is. But the best way to use the example is if a company is for sale and it's contemplating a merger and there are 2 or 3 suitors, then the obligation is to make sure that you're getting the best value for the stockholders. But again, reasonable people can differ when they're comparing 2 or 3 different deals, what the best deal is for the stockholders, depending on what the particulars are. So I don't know if I've run out. Looks like I have a few seconds left. And, I guess, like I said, I could talk for hours about this, but I think the best way to give the answer is through the example that I did. And again, I could go on for much longer, but I think that's probably the best way to summarize. Thank you again.
Great.
Thank you very much, Francis. And speaking of examples, many of the cases in the back of the book are lifted directly from his blog. So with his permission.
Great. Well, thank you. Let me move on to communications and mergers and acquisition. And Bob, thanks again for being here and contributing to our book. You know, as the former managing director of Reuter Finn, you've helped many companies in their merger communications. What do you think are the top 3 teachings you would share with us? What do you see? And let me give the microphone.
Well, thank you, John, and everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here on this special occasion. Alex and John asked me to comment on what I consider to be top 3 teachings in merger communications. So here are a few for consideration. First, don't jump the gun regarding M&A publicity or press releases, despite what outside encouragement might be or your own instinct to move the market to your advantage. This applies whether you are the acquirer or the acquiree. The general rule of thumb is that public companies should acknowledge M&A discussions without specifics when there are rumors in the market, perhaps caused by leaks and concurrent stock price and or volume reaction. Absent this, it's best to keep all merger discussions up until agreement in principle is reached confidential. It helps here that the M&A team is small. At the same time, a press release is called for when parties indeed reach an agreement in principle. This is a simple statement that such an agreement has been reached, naming both parties, no terms, of course. Due diligence follows the agreement in principle and could take months. No further public statement is generally required until the deal is done or dead. Secondly, and recognizing that the vast majority of M&A proposals die between the agreement in principle and deal consummation, principally over disagreement in financial terms, do not speak or publish publicly on a consolidated or pro forma basis. It's business as usual and communications as usual, each as single entities. The market is smart. As it wants, it will crunch the numbers on its own terms and value accordingly. And third, not necessarily in order of importance, do ensure that your company's disclosure policy and procedures are up to date with latest best practices, and that all employees know and are bound by the rule that the company only speaks with one voice and through a small group of individuals who are authorized to speak. No one else has the right or authority to speak on or opine publicly or privately on corporate matters. This includes internet chat or inadvertent pillow talk. In addition to potential regulatory infringement, it could actually kill the deal. And finally, I would encourage companies engaged in such situations to start planning for internal communications and initial integration strategy regarding the merger well before the closing of the transaction.
Thank you so much, Bob. And now we move on to Dr. Solange Charras. Solange, as someone with decades of experience in compensation and with a PhD in corporate governance from Case Western, what can you tell us about the governance of compensation when two companies combine their systems?
So, I want to echo everybody else. I am so delighted to be included in the book and to be working with you. We've known each other for 30 years, something like that. I also want to point out how the communications person is the only one of us that actually had something scripted. This is the guy that you want to do your communication. So I just want to acknowledge you for holding down the fort.
I don't know if that's suitable.
No, that's good, that's good. So, there's an old adage in the compensation world, and I think it applies pretty much in every world, which is people will do what you pay them to do. And so it's very important pre-acquisition to understand what the drivers of behavior are in terms of governance, economic value creation, and overall corporate behavior, especially to employees of the executives of both organizations. So one is a behavioral aspect, which is actually looking at what are the program designs incenting people to do to get their rewards, which is so fundamental. And what we're looking for is some type of an alignment between the two organizations, because it's that underlying incentives that are really important to understand. So one is a behavioral aspect. The second is, of course, the risk exposure of executive compensation. So from a pure due diligence perspective, we need to understand and quantify the risk that's associated with the acquisition, a change of control, single, double triggers, and whether or not there are any unfunded liabilities, and that will impact the deal value. Now, that's technically what we talk about in the book, but there's been a lot of developments in the governance world as of late, from organizations, investing organizations wanting to understand more, not only about the executive remuneration and the impact on organizations, but the whole human capital performance of the organization. So investor organizations like the Human Capital Management Coalition that has something like $3.6 trillion under management and has put pressure on the SEC. The SEC in January came out and said that human capital really should be viewed as an intangible asset versus an expense. They're also talking about certain companies having to disclose human capital behavior or metrics as a way for investors to understand how human capital is actually contributing to bottom line performance. And those things you need to think about. I know I'm over my time. I'm just taking some of Francis's time.
I yield.
He yields to me. And so, you know, this book is a technical book. It's wonderful. And one of the things that we need to think about to make mergers and acquisitions successful is to actually understand how people impact the going forward strategy. And looking at due diligence from an HR perspective in a new way to really understand sustainability and value creation. Okay.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
With this bit of extra time, I'm an ESG consultant. My firm is Alchemy Strategies Partners, And essentially, we work with private equity firms, helping prepare them to talk to large institutional investors. And I specifically work on helping them understand ESG, what it means to them, what it means to their investment processes, and then how to explain that to institutional investors.
Okay. Thank you, Francis. My apologies for getting the name. See, I even emailed him a few days ago. I was like, Francis, this is how you want your name tag? And of course, I didn't print out that name tag. So thank you so much. But Francis, you are a distinguished veteran and with service in the world of institutional investors and corporate credit raters. Do you think these players, who are the institutional investors and corporate credit raters, have a true impact that M&A has on the value of securities? Why or why not?
Okay. Well, the simple answer is, to justify my being here, is yes, of course they do. But beyond justification for my presence here, and I thank you, Alex, again for including me in this very august group, some of whom I've worked with, dealt with for many, many a year.
And shake in the presence of.
And in the presence of, yes. So I will say that absolutely they do. Certainly, and let's start first with the credit rating firms, as opposed to calling them credit rating agencies, as I was taught. Essentially, their ability to impact on the amount of capital and the cost of capital that you're going to be able to receive is just incredible, and that's a power that remains with the credit rating firms, with S&P and with Moody's and with Finch, and even to probably a much lesser extent some of the smaller competitors in that market. So they play a huge role, and some of that is often out of sight of the market and out of sight of everyone else. They're in the discussions when companies go to rating agencies and say, we're thinking about doing this, we're thinking about doing that, primarily because that does not need to be disclosed. So obviously there can be pushback from a credit rating firm, from analysts and a team saying, well, you really want to think about how you're going to pay for this longer term. And that can have an impact on the thinking of the shape of the deal and the structure of the deal. On the institutional investor side, institutional investors have always had some influence, but I think that influence has been magnified by some of the divisions in the institutional investment community, whether it's activists like Carl Icahn or whether it's ESG advocates like Scott Stringer. There's an ability now to sort of impact across shareholders and the impact with the proxy advisors as well, so that they are looking at the thinking not just of management but also of these other outside players and what their concerns are. So yes, they absolutely have an impact and will continue to.
Great. Thank you.